So welcome to this Injury Prevention Week's presentation. It's maintaining work-life harmony during demanding times. So I'm Dave Wilson. I'm a moderator for the session. I'm on the board of directors of Actsafe, and I'm also on the Performing Arts Standing Committee. We've heard all about the idea of work-life balance. Typically, we think of a scale and imagine putting more weight on the personal side to balance the scale. Instead, we should be thinking about how to create harmony between our work and personal lives, where the two are integrated. Today, you will gain useful skills and strategies for cultivating increased harmony and interaction between your work and personal lives in an effort to enhance overall psychological well-being. So my pleasure to introduce Dr. Melanie Badali. Dr. Badali is a registered psychologist with My Workplace Health and has over 20 years of experience working as a consultant, clinician, researcher, instructor, and a knowledge translator in the field of psychology. Dr. Badali is certified in the practice of cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, by the Canadian Association of Cognitive and Behavioral Therapies, and is a registered psychology provider for Veterans Affairs Canada, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and Canadian Forces. I'll actually put her entire bio, if you haven't seen it on the website, I will put it into the chat so you have that there. Welcome, Dr. Badali.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. And, it's always weird to hear my bio because, at the heart of it all, I'm a human being and we all are. This idea of work-life harmony isn't just about a string of credentials. It's about the fact that I'm also a mom and a partner and a daughter and a sister. And, in the same way as, Dave acknowledged the Indigenous lands that we're on, there's lots of connections that we all have. And I'm speaking to you actually from the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, unceded territories. So, today I'm going to just figure out how to share my presentation screen. But in terms of questions, I would encourage you, if you don't understand something I said, like I know a knowledge translator is on my bio, and my best friend was reading a bio that I gave her for something, and she said, "What's that, Melanie? Like, what the heck's a knowledge translator?" And you forget sometimes when you are a psychologist and you read all this stuff that some of this language sounds a bit weird. And so I would encourage you, if you like my best friend or like, what the heck are you talking about? Please, ask any of those questions for clarification in the chat. And basically a knowledge translator is just, I take information from the scientific literature and I try and put it into everyday language. And it is really silly that that actually is called something that has a weird, a weird name. And so, if there's any questions like that, you're like, cognitive, what the heck is that? And that's just a fancy word for thinking, things like that. Please, share your questions. Other than that, we'll leave 15 minutes at the end to get into a discussion, and I will answer the questions that are going to be most relevant for you. So I would definitely invite you to do that. The other thing I'd like you to do at this time is, if you have a pen and just a little one piece of paper to scratch on, near the end of the presentation, I'm going to be asking you to do an exercise. Now, you don't have to do it, but I think you'll get more out of the presentation if you actually write it down and take it away and think about it, because I don't want to just be a talking head. I think we're all kind of, sort of maxed out on new information, and even if it's helpful, I think there's only so much. So I'm hoping that there's one little nugget, one little kernel that you will take away, and hopefully will help you, will help inspire change for you. Okay, so I'm going to try and figure out how to share this presentation. Present from beginning.
Melanie, you need to share your screen.
I needed to share my screen, I realized. Sorry. Okay, share screen. There we go. Is that looking better?
Yep, much better. And there we go.
Oh, okay. And there's the human me who can figure out the computer. But I have a PhD, so Okay, and so I just wanted to give a shout out to my workplace health. If there's something in this presentation that you think, oh, that actually sounds interesting, I'd like to learn more about that, I really encourage you to go to the website myworkplacehealth.com, because there are so many totally free materials that you can access there, and great little blog posts and things that can help you learn about how to maintain mental health generally and mental health in the workplace specifically. The slides for this presentation were actually prepared by Dr. Jody Samra, the CEO and founder of My Workplace Health, and her team there. So you're actually, I think, going to get the best of, two psychologists in this presentation, because you've got some of her kind of key points or highlights and areas that she hits when she talks about this talk, when she gives a similar talks, and then you've got a second person, that's me, take on it. So maintaining work-life harmony. And as Dave mentioned, we've been talking about this idea of work-life balance for years. And, oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm Italian, so I like to talk with my hands, and with this screen in the back, it's making it a bit weird. So please bear with me. But we often talk about this, kind of balance scale as if there's only two sides, as if it's this teeter-totter, that at some point we can stand on the fulcrum or the middle of it and be perfectly balanced. And anyone who's ever been on a teeter-totter or seen some kids play, at the playground knows it's not that simple. Often you have a little light kid and a heavier kid, and the heavier kid's got that light kid up on top. There's maybe like a couple minutes of up and down fun play, and then another kid jumps on and one kid's stranded. And, that's often what work-life balance feels like. You're just kind of dancing and sliding around there, trying to make things work. So the idea of work-life harmony is more like you're the choir director of a choir that's aspiring to make beautiful music together, or you're the conductor of an orchestra, or you're the CEO of a company. I know that's not really harmony, but there might be some more businessy types in your industry who are listening. You're the director of a show, right? And so we all know that that final performance looks nothing like the practices and the dress rehearsal and the backstage and the casting and or the editing, and all the different components that go into getting there. And I think that's something I really want to talk about today, is that we need to recognize that when we're looking around at other people, especially right now, we are not seeing their backstage. People are, in general, not really doing that well right now. And so I am giving this presentation from a place of, humility and compassion. I do not, if you were listening to my work-life harmony right now, you might change the channel or turn the volume down. It's not pretty, but I'm working on it. And, I aspire you to approach this topic in that way too, is that this is a process. This is something, it's not an accident that Dr. Jody put maintaining in there. I mean, some of us might need to even acquire it first before we can maintain it. But the idea is that, we keep working on it to make it better. With COVID-19 upon us, even people who were, sounding good, things were harmonizing before, have been thrown for a loop. Many people in your industry, and certainly mine as well, we're sensitive people, and the pain of the world is our pain. And that's where a lot of really great art comes from. It comes from that kind of, pain in your soul. And there's so many healthy ways to express it. But right now it's feeling so heavy for so many people. And so anything we can do to, improve our mental health, keep our mental health from deteriorating, can really be helpful. So the objectives of today's presentation are threefold. One, to understand the difference between work-life balance versus work-life harmony. Two, to consider the modern day factors that impact our work-life harmony and psychological health. And three, and this is, I think, going to be the most useful part, learn about effective strategies to enhance well-being. And myself as a psychologist and all the folks at my workplace, health.com, we're not just pulling these strategies, out of thin air. We're looking to the scientific literature to see what works best for most people in these situations. And so we've always had to tailor them to the individual. And I always still continue to approach this as a scientist. Let's pick some things, let's try them out, let's see what works for you. In the era of a global pandemic, we don't have a lot of science to draw on. So we are, kind of giving our opinion about what do we think is going to work best based on the last 6 months in our clinical practice, based on the emerging science that's coming out, and based upon what's worked in the past. Okay. And so Dr. Jody has worked for, I don't know, I think at least 20 years in this field. And, I think I started doing my first psychovocational assessments in, I don't know, 2001. So I'm approaching 20 years myself of, trying to get people to find, one, a good fit for them, professionally, vocationally, and two, helping people thrive in the workplace. The other, kind of goal with my workplace health is to look at organizations, because you know what, it's not just the individual. When we have situations involving burnout, for example, it's not just about one person, it's about the organization. And I think right now we have all these factors that, that are new to us that we're dealing with. So now more than ever, we need to do away with the notion of work-life balance, this simple, like, kind of, oh, it's something I can get it if I just work harder, if I could just work harder, or if I just, stop work and then focus solely on my family, I'm going to be fulfilled. I mean, that might work. It might work to just work or just, focus on something else. But for most of us, we are left feeling empty. And I know that for a long time, I was trying to get balance. And what I would often find was it was just too hard to shift mindsets. And I would often feel like either I wasn't doing enough as a mom, or I wasn't doing enough as a psychologist. And, you can insert artist, provider, whatever your terms are in your roles and your relationships, partner, or, if you're single and you're a person who actually is interested in having a partner, time and invested in dating, because let's face it, it takes time. Again, it can kind of set you up for this sense of you're never doing enough, you're never good enough anywhere. And the idea of work-life harmony is different. It's not just words, like, it is a different way of approaching the situation. And so instead, we want to try and strive for intentional and thoughtful harmony between our work and personal lives. So you can actually be doing the same amount of work or spending the same amount of time in work and home, or volunteer work and church, whatever you got going on, and still not kind of feel together. So this is an idea of kind of being thoughtful, intentional, and approaching things in a slightly different way, and letting your values lead you. And so I'm going to be talking more about that when we talk about our strategies that we recommend. So, love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. And Sigmund Freud said this. He was a psychiatrist from Vienna, and many consider the father of both modern psychiatry and modern psychology. And so I think, he really tapped into this idea of this is what makes humans difficult from some other creatures, right? We share respiratory systems, we share reflexes, we share a lot of things with other species, but the ideas of love and work are really uniquely human. And balancing them out can be hard. And so what we want to be thinking about is, how do we get them kind of working together, working for us, so that we're getting the most out of all the different areas of our life. This image, I think, is a pretty nice image of how many of us feel like with work and home lives colliding right now. And so, we're at a different place in the pandemic now, some of us, than we were 6 months ago. There are 6 months ago, some people were out and essential workers and, braving the risks of COVID-19, kind of every day. And others of us were totally hunkering down at home. Slowly over time, things have been opening up. We still have a lot of people still spending a lot of time at home and trying to do work at home. We're also finding, even when we're in our workplaces, it's different. So I was in psychology clinic that I work in yesterday, and I went to bring my cup to go get some water from the water cooler, like I've done a million times before, and there's a sign from it saying we can only use disposable cups because you might touch the lid or something like that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to use a disposable cup, and I don't have to bring a water bottle, and like totally not a big deal. But again, it just speaks to the mental load that even people who are not working from home and totally in the blur of this, kind of a toddler running by, your meeting, you're trying to get in the zone, all this kind of stuff. Even in the workplace, there's all these other things that we're trying to remember. So if it's not work and home, that's colliding. It's work and COVID safety measures, or it's work and thinking about your kid at school and what's happening there. And we've always had that to a certain extent, but just now, like whatever little fires you had going on, it's like gasoline has been sprayed on top of them. And pardon me, I know we've had a lot of smoke from wildfires last week. If anybody was in Vancouver, I think most of BC was affected by that. So I don't mean to be insensitive, but I do think that, even that, not being able to, go outside, it just had many of us feeling even more sort of trapped. So again, we're really facing unprecedented times, and they're not over yet, right? We're 6 months in, we're getting tired, and we've still got probably another year to go. So we've got to get our heads in the game and come up with a plan so we don't all completely lose it, which some of us have already, and some of us are trying to get back on track. Some of us are pretty close. There's no bad time to make a small change, right? So and wherever you're at, try and be thinking through this presentation, what's a small change that I can make. I just need to check the time. Sorry, I thought that a little timer would be appearing on the screen. It isn't. So I just want to make sure that I don't overtalk. Dave, are there any questions so far? Clarification questions?
No, they're not. We're good.
Okay, good. So the data, even pre-COVID, was that the reality of today's world is that we're working longer hours, and the modern day work environment is rapidly changing and evolving. Even just right before I did this presentation, I had to put like my do not disturb sign on my phone, my iPad, at my computer. And again, I'm very privileged, so lucky me that I have all these things. Some people are struggling, in this modern day environment to even have one, technology device to connect. But then there's other people who are just like, oh my gosh, like another email from my boss. It's like a dagger. And not everybody has a work phone and a home phone or separate accounts. And also, even when you do, sometimes the temptation to check is just, too big. So we were already kind of blurring together pre-COVID-19, and now it's like, where's the line? If we don't draw it, it's not going to be there. So these factors really increase tension and pull in our personal lives. And I think one of the things that I've been seeing a lot over the past 6 months is this impetus for things to be business as usual, or I don't know if you consider it like art as usual, whatever language you use to describe things in your world. And it's not, it can't be, right? I mean, people are are tired. There's so many demands for our attention. We're overloaded cognitively, emotionally. And so how do you kind of make these shifts to make room for that, to make room for maybe a little bit of a loss of creativity or productivity? One thing that I've seen a lot is a slow burn, where people were trying to catch up. They weren't as productive, they weren't as on during the day, so they're actually working even longer hours to get the same amount of work done. And so again, we've seen people trying all different strategies to survive over these past 6 months. And again, I think if you haven't had to, if things have been easy so far, unfortunately, I mean, chances are it's going to come at some point where you're struggling with this tension also. Okay, I'm just going to move this down. Okay, so work outside of work. Sound familiar? I think this is the reality for most of us who do work. The increased mobility of technology makes it harder to leave work at work. 45% of Canadians use technology for some sort of work while on vacation. 70% reported that increased technology has increased the amount of stress they feel. And so, one of these things that's been happening now is people's vacations don't even feel like vacations if you're still in your home. The separation between work and home, again, so blurry these days. Oh, sorry, I'm just gonna do the slide here. Okay. 60% of people do supplementary work on weeknights. 75% do work on weekends. 2/3 of employees report work interferes with family. And so, one of the things that you might find is that you didn't even realize you were working from home before. Maybe it was like, okay, I'm reviewing my lines, by reviewing my script, and I'm in my comfy chair with my cozy blanket, and it's fun because if you do a job that you love, it doesn't feel like work sometimes. And one of the things that I noticed is I didn't actually realize how much I worked from home until COVID hit, because with the contrast of coming home from the clinic, I enjoyed writing something or doing something in my cozy home, and it didn't feel like work. It just felt sort of like productive kind of time. And now it's different. If you're working from home all day in the same chair, you don't feel like sitting in that chair and doing more work, or I don't anyways. And, most people don't. That's not just me. So again, some of the same issues that some people were feeling before, magnified. On top of that, outside the world of work, the data is coming in. And so unfortunately, there's not a ton of scientific data telling us exactly what to do to help people, but we do have the data, and it's pretty clear the global pandemic has increased overall levels of stress and anxiety, increased drinking alcohol, increased other substance use, increased depressive symptoms. I mean, really, people's health is taking kind of a hit across the board. Many of us struggle to get into healthy routines, and when those were thrown off, trying to kind of reorganize and get back on track has been quite challenging. Some of the data shows, just to give you an idea, kind of 4 times the amount of anxiety symptomatology, 2 times the amount of depressive symptomatology. I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, should we even be calling it anxiety and depression or mental health problems when everybody's experiencing them? That's how pervasive things are. When I'm being asked for diagnosis these days, it's so much harder, because I'm like, I don't want to pathologize people. These are like pretty normal reactions to very difficult situations. And so I would encourage you, as you're kind of moving through your life right now, and taking the time during this week to reflect on your mental health and your health. to just kind of take a moment and recognize that this is hard. This is not just you, right? It's really not. And I think it's important for people to kind of remember that. You know, I think in the moment, it can be adaptive to think, all right, I can control this if I just insert whatever it is for you, work harder, spend more family time, whatever, you know, I'm going to feel better. And absolutely, that's a healthy attitude to have. You know, you want to try and control the things that you can control. There's so much uncertainty right now. If you've got actually some things where you can, you know, set a goal and make it happen, do it. Absolutely do it. Add some structure. Do what you need to do. But we also have to recognize that we do have to sit with discomfort right now. We do have to tolerate the uncertainty that is there. And this is very hard to do. You know, one of the things that people ask me, and you know, may come up later when we chat, is how do you know when you need help? You know, you're saying anxiety is really common. I'm actually, you know, as my volunteer job, I'm the vice president of the board of directors for Anxiety Canada, and so, you know, I know a lot about anxiety. I do know, and it's just everybody is anxious these days. And one of the things that people commonly ask me isn't some detailed question that you would ask. You know, like for me, I thought, oh, people think you're an expert. They're going to ask you some really, really hard, you know, unusual question. No, that's not what people ask me. People ask me, is this a problem? How do I get help? Right? And so what I usually tell people, and I will share with you, is it's normal to feel negative emotions. It's normal to have bad days, bad weeks. It's when it's most of the time for a prolonged period of time, right? Most of the time, it's pretty bad. And it's lasting, you know, kind of 2 weeks or more. You know, it sort of depends. Like for some people, you know, it's kind of mild to moderate, but it's like been going on for 6 months. Other times it's like really bad, but it's only been going on for a week. I mean, there's always going to be some judgment there about, you know, what meets a criteria for, you know, a diagnosis of a mental disorder, but you don't have to worry about whether it meets criteria. Usually what I say to people is, if you're asking me the question, it probably wouldn't hurt to get some help. Now, that might just mean educating yourself a little bit more, going to My Workplace Health or other reputable sources of information and learning a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's me. I worry. The word for what's happening for me is worry. And here are 3 concrete strategies I can use to manage that worry. I mean, that might be all you need. Other people might need, you know, psychotherapy, or they might need medication. You know, in Canada, getting help for mental health can be very difficult, but we do have it better than a lot of other places in the world, in that we do have access to GPs and walk-in clinics. And if you look at the stats, you know, the amount of visits for mental health to GPs or family doctors, general practitioners, is very high. Okay, so we're at 1:30. Sorry, I'm passionate about this topic, so I could, you know, talk all day about any one slide, any one of Dr. Samra's slides. All right, so 6 months in, you know, many people are asking, am I burnt out? You know, I'm feeling burnt out. Am I burnt out? What is burnout? A state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. I think a lot of us are feeling some version of this right now. You know, I'm just mindful of the time, and I want to make sure that we have time for the strategies portion of the presentation. So I'm just going to kind of whip through this a little bit, but just encourage you that if you're wondering, is this me? You know, couldn't hurt to talk to somebody about it. And there are increased resources because of COVID-19 for mental health right now. Still not enough, not nearly enough, but there is more. Energy depletion or exhaustion. This is the one that's most familiar to people. Reduced professional effectiveness, and increase mental distance from one's job. And so this often comes out as that, like you're just feeling really negative and cynical. And for some people, that's just normal. That's, gallows humor. That's how our industry operates. if being sarcastic meant you're burnt out, then we're all burnt out. So, again, keep this in mind. But if you weren't, kind of that way before, and now everything just seems like a waste of time, then that's a sign for you. Burnout is not a mental health disorder. Burnout is considered an occupational health phenomena. So, something that is now recognized by the World Health Organization. So, something to be thinking about in the context of work for sure. So let's transition to the strategies portion of the presentation. I know right now people are like, give me some tips, give me some tools. How do I handle this? I already know that, I'm feeling the tension and the strain. Give me some concrete tips. So what are some keys to trying to get things more harmonious? What are some tips to getting things more integrated and feeling better? When you make that decision, maybe you pull back in one area and ramp up in the other area. You're not feeling like crap about, leaving one area. You're like, okay, this is good for my overall health. This is good for my overall, life plan, that kind of thing. How do you do it? Number one, make conscious choices. What's that mean? So of course, you're awake. You're conscious. What other kind of choices would you be making? Actually, you would be surprised how many of us, we get asked to do things and we just say yes. Oh, that sounds like a good opportunity, and we're just kind of going with the flow, and that's okay. Kind of working on the basis of intuition and going in the flow isn't a problem until it's a problem. Once you're kind of full, once you're having, trouble getting that harmony and things are sounding like a cacophony, or sorry, just like all sounding bad, that's when you really need to start paying attention and being more strategic about the choices that you make. So what activities are we going to engage in, including work? And for many of us, I'm going to say most of us, unless anyone watching this talk is independently wealthy, we need to work because we need money, we need to eat, and put a roof over our heads. And certainly any of you who are living in the Vancouver area know that that's a pretty expensive thing to do. And all of BC is feeling that pressure as well. So within the constraints of that, choices are ideally made based on what is important to us from a values-based perspective. I just want to stop. Dave, any questions so far, just from a clarity standpoint?
No, but we're stacking up questions for later.
Oh, yay. Okay, that's great. That's great. So we really want to be living our life with intention. And this can be useful because, again, right now in this period of uncertainty, we want to have agency. We want to be able to make choices. We want to be able to feel in control of some things at least, right? And so, you might have been let go from your job, or there might have been a pause put in it. There's, so many factors that are outside of our control. This is about really saying, kind of within the confines of what we can control, how do we laser focused on the stuff that's going to give us the most bang for the buck? Because we don't have time to do it all, or I don't anyways, but I'm pretty sure none of us do. When we are feeling discouraged in life, it is often because we are living in a way that is inconsistent with our values. okay, with the things that are important to us, with the things we care about. You know, if your top priority, the thing you care the most about is spending time with your family and you never see them because you're working all the time, that's not going to feel good. And you don't want it to feel good, because there should be some sort of message that says, hey, we got a little bit off track here in terms of what's important to us in life. Is there any way to self-correct? And sometimes even a small change, just having, you know, kind of a 1 hour dedicated together on purpose, that, you know, conscious, intentional time together can make a difference. You know, in terms of some of the service that the arts and motion picture industry has had, you know, on my family, one of, you know, kind of my touchstones through this pandemic is watching a half an hour show with my family every night. We come together, we watch it. Right now we're watching Avatar. You know, we watch the show, something we all look forward to every night. And, you know, right now that's good for our mental health. And so, you know, the arts right now is actually propping up a lot of people's mental health. I mean, some people are definitely watching too much Netflix, but I think other people are, you know, are immersing themselves in books and art and film, to actually good effect on our mental health. So what are these clues? What, you know, how can we get back on track? Well, first we have to figure out what are our values. And so this is a definition that Dr. Jody has put up here. Value, the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. Oh, your support to me is of great value. I like the definition, you know, of values, your heart's deepest desires for how you want to behave as a human being, right? So, do you want to be kind? Do you want to have integrity? Do you want to be trustworthy? These kind of big things. Do you want to be good to your family? Do you want to make great art? Do you want to work really hard and do a great job? What is important to you? So part of values connected living is taking some time to figure out, okay, what are my values? And so this is the time I mentioned, you know, if you had a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, I'd like you to get it out right now. And what I'd like you to do, sorry, I've lost the picture of myself here. So hopefully, hopefully what I'm going to ask you to do makes sense. I would like you to draw a circle, okay? And I'd like you to make it look like a bullseye or a dartboard, something like that, like a circle and then another circle and another circle. I don't know how to do kind of whiteboard here. But yeah, just draw yourself a circle. And then what I want you to do is put a plus sign in that circle, so that you've sort of divided it into 4 quadrants. Okay. And as I'm going to give people a chance to do that in case you need to run and get a pen or paper. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about values connected living, and I'm going to come back to that. So if you have any questions about what I meant, please ask Dave, and then I'll pause at the end of this to go back there. Okay, values connected living: professional, personal, family, physical, social, spiritual. These are just some areas of life that are important to people. And so Jody's done a really nice kind of, you know, pie chart of how big of a piece of the pie are these taken, right? So there's like your values pie in terms of what piece do I want to have the you know, kind of the biggest piece for, what's most important to me. And then there's also the reality of your time pie. So, you know, your values pie might actually have work as this tiny little piece because you don't care so much about work. You're really about family and leisure and volunteering and a bunch of stuff. You don't really care so much about work, but you need to eat. So your time pie is probably going to have a bigger piece of work. And again, that's okay if there's a disconnect between what you're doing and what's important to you. the work that you want to do to try and get more harmony is, one, being aware of it, and two, making choices where you can to get those time pies and value pies more aligned. Okay, so I'm just going to give people again a second to run and maybe get that paper and pencil. Other areas that are important to people: friendship, social relations, career, employment, education, training, growth, spirituality. There's a whole host of different areas. Okay. Dave, do we have any questions about how to draw that circle and that plus sign bullseye?
No, I think everybody's good.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry. If I was speaking in person, I'd be like writing on a whiteboard or a chalkboard or whatever was in there, you know, or handing you a paper handout. But we'll just muddle through this together. Okay, so you've got those 4 areas, you know, on your bullseye. I'd like you to label 1, work/education, 1, relationships, 1, personal growth and health, and 1, leisure. Okay. And so what I want you to do after this presentation, if you're feeling, hey, maybe my time pie and values pie are a little bit out of sync. Maybe I actually haven't taken any time to really think what's important to me. How do I want to live my life? Or maybe you thought you knew that stuff and then a pandemic came and ripped through your life and you're like, time to reevaluate. And we often see this. We see this, you know, with the loss of a loved one, divorces, job loss. You know, there's this opportunity for, if you go through it, you can grow through it. Like, you know, we change. You know, just take a second to be thinking, you know, of that bullseye. If the middle is, you know, kind of really where you want to be, of those 4 areas that tend to be kind of areas of value for a lot of people, how close to center are you and how off base are you in those areas? You know, just something to be thinking about, because sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm right on track with work, but man, I've let relationships slide. And that's okay. Right? That's okay if you figured that out. But then when you go forward to make conscious choices, you can be like, oh, okay, I'm going to say no to the next work opportunity provided I can afford it. And I'm going to carve out a little bit more time for relationships or for fun, leisure, for something else. Okay. Identify 1 area of personal value that is not being filled up the way you would like. Right? So of that bullseye, just to kind of give you an idea, it doesn't have to be those 4 areas. I'm just trying to give people a sense of what the heck we're talking about here. Yours can be something totally different. You put whatever you want. It could be poetry. I don't care what it is. It can be anything you want, just something that's important to you. And here's the trick, is we're trying to then align our behaviors, what we do, our actions, with what's important to us. So 1, identify what's something that's important to you and that you really would like to kind of really devote a little bit more energy to. And 2, what's a behavioral change you can commit to making? And Dr. Jody is precise in her words. You need to be able to commit, right? So if you're finding that you set a goal and you're not doing it, it was probably too big. So it's not that it necessarily wasn't important, but try something smaller, right? So if you're like, I'm going to start running, you know, my health is really important to me. I'm going to get back to running every day for half an hour, and then you don't do it. Say, I'm going to start, you know, maybe you want to bring it back to, well, how about I start with a 10-minute walk every day and then go from there. It's always easier to scale up. If you set the goals too high, what can often happen, especially if you're not feeling, you know, super energetic and motivated, is it can actually make you feel worse. You set the goal, you don't meet it, and your kind of mood and sense of self-efficacy goes down. So if the change you want to make doesn't happen, just pull it back a little bit, just a scooch, make it really doable. You know, work with passion. Passion helps us find meaning in our work. This makes work less depleting. This is, you know, again, hopefully your industry, most people who are in that industry are pretty passionate in my experience. You know, that will sustain you. Be paying attention for opportunities for flow. That's when you really feel in the zone, you know, and trying to make that happen, really lean into it. And, you know, say yes to more of those opportunities. If it's writing, when you feel that way, you know, try and pursue that. If it's acting, you know, do that. When do you feel the most kind of engaged and like the challenge meets your skills, and you kind of blink and an hour goes by and you're like, what? I didn't even realize. That's flow, right? You want to pursue those opportunities. We want to lean into enhancing relationships. This will help our mental health and our physical health. Relationships are good for us if we want them. If you're just not a people person, no worries. But if you want them, we have to be creative right now about how we engage. Sorry, I'm whipping through these just because I want to have time for questions. Focus on your physical health. Do what you can to get active. Pay attention to substances and diet. That can derail a lot of people. It's so hard right now, but do what you can. Remember, just try and do a little small goal, just a little bit above where you're at. Try and separate out that work time from your personal time. I know it's gotten really blurry, but do whatever you can, even if it's like listening to music while you're working and not listening when you're home, or vice versa. Any little small changes, different lighting, different blanket on the couch, whatever it is, try and make that separation, even if it's, you know, leaving, going for a little walk and coming back to the exact same room. Just try and get a little bit of separation there. Yeah. Here's a little snapshot of work from home. Yeah, that kid there looks actually pretty well behaved. But yeah, we know it's really challenging right now. So here's a great quote. I love this. There is no such thing as work-life balance. It is all life. The balance has to be within you. So I didn't make this up. It's not my quote, but it's beautiful. I sort of can also imagine, and not to be disrespectful to the Sadhguru, but I could also even imagine Yoda saying it or something like that. And I have been doing a lot of recentering lately and encouraging my clients to do, okay, what are my values? Are my actions aligned with my values? How do I get back on track here? Deep breaths. You know, like one of my clients joked, it's like the old GPSs that would say recalculating when you kind of got off track, and they would try and help you get back on track. We have to have been doing a lot of recalculating. Or to go with the theme of you know, work-life harmony, we've had to do a lot of retuning, a lot. Resistance, I'll just kind of leave you with this idea that you know, suffering equals pain times resistance. We are in hard times right now. We don't get a chance to say, not it. I don't want this pandemic, not me. Sorry, we're in it. We have to try and roll with it, for lack of a better word, and kind of do what we can to manage it, because we just can't get rid of the pain, but we can help the suffering piece by kind of being more open to the experience. I know it's a hard ask, but we got to do what we got to do. So sorry about that. I, as usual, have so much I want to say and never enough time. There's lots of great information on the myworkplacehealth.com. I really encourage you to go there and follow also the social media stuff, always good stuff being shared there. Yeah, let's open it up to some questions.
Okay, thanks. And maybe we can remove you can unshare your screen for in a bit,
okay.
so we can see you in larger life. So the first question came in a while ago, and I actually, I think you kind of answered it a few minutes ago, but I'll the question to you anyway. It's, when working from home during the winter weather with less of an opportunity to go outside, have you any tips for separating work from while indoors?
That is a fantastic question. Yes, so micro movement breaks. I don't know, I'm from Toronto, and I remember going to Blue Jay baseball games, and they'd have this 7th inning stretch where there was like a song you know, you would kind of move around to them. So, you know, you can still move inside, depending what your situation is. I would really encourage you to try and build in a break outside. I mean, that's one of the benefits from working from home is most people can manage a little bit of a breath of fresh air, even, you know, and if it means you get a better umbrella or something like that, or maybe my new pandemic purchase is these AirPods, which are waterproof. So, you know, you get a baseball hat, brave the weather, see what you can do to get outside. Um, if you can't do that, think about something, if it's not going to be active in activities or yoga stretches, there's so many great, like if you search YouTube, like 2-minute break or 5-minute stretch or something like that, you've got all sorts of things that can guide you through. But think about some sort of other sensory experience. Maybe put on some nice smelly hand cream. I think many of us, unfortunately, are overusing food and our taste sensation, but think about like your basic 5 senses and say, okay, how can I shake things up here just to get stimulated, you know, listening to some music, that kind of thing. But definitely we're going to need that active stimulation because we're not getting it at the water cooler. It's interacting over video is not the same as interacting in person. So yeah, really just try and be creative, try different things and ask your friends. Just say, hey, what are you doing for this? I've gotten some great tips just from chatting with other people.
Great, thank you. The next question is, when you take some time off due to burnout, how do you avoid the stress and anxiety of knowing you're going to be returning to the same heavy workload when you go back to work?
That's such a great question. And I've worked with people returning to work for years. And one of the things that we try to do is either approach it with a different mindset or see if we can actually get the duties to be different. Because sometimes it is an untenable workload and you have to be thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to do this return to work, a graduated return to work, but then I'm going to get my resume in order and I'm going to get out of that place because that is just not a good fit for me. That is, you know, maybe it was energizing at one point and now it's toxic. So really be thinking of, do you even want to go back there? And two, how can you do protected time? So one of the strategies that I've used with clients over the years is putting in their calendar blocks that are personal blocks that are meant for like a walk outside or lunch or a psychology appointment, whatever it is. And you give it something, you know, an MB meeting or whatever you want to call it. You don't have to tell other people what it is. You don't even have to write personal, just block it off. And so then you know, okay, I'm going to take these recharge times. And what we find as part of this idea of work-life harmony is when you're singing, you're not necessarily always listening to other people. You want to pull back, be that choir director and be like, oh, yeah, that's out of tune. This is not working. So trying to create that distance for yourself, and you're not going to do it if you don't take breaks. So I think the number one, and people struggle with this so much, is how do you build in breaks? Because most workplaces do not do that for you.
Okay. I've got a question. The next one is, how can leaders ensure that they also follow a proper work-life balance? Well, I'm going to add to that because as a question of my own that is related to that. It's what about the workaholic who has a fine work-life balance, thanks very much, but his workaholic, and he's probably a jobaholic as well, or sorry, bossaholic as well, affects he or she, the employees around them and life at home, but they don't recognize it whatsoever themselves.
That is a tough one. That's definitely a tough one. You know, and there's no easy, nice way to do it. It has to be communication. It has to be you know, when you do your values work, right? And you're realizing, okay, I'm going to commit to this. What are my job duties? What does that look like? And have a talk and say, I am working, you know, if you're supposed to be working 8 hours, you're saying, I'm working 15 hours. I'm not shutting off. I think the work is suffering. You know, how can we problem solve to make this better?
There needs to be intervention to get to that point, though, I guess.
True. I mean, and sometimes like it does have to go over somebody's head. And, you know, like, that's why we really like, you know, places like My Workplace Health, you get somebody in there and be like, let's all just kind of say like, how much time are we actually spending? What are we expecting our staff to do? That same best friend that I mentioned before, she sent an email really late at night, and she added a piece that said, I don't expect you to be working late at night hours. I took some time off to do something with my daughter today. So, I think a good leader, like, I don't actually think you're a good leader or a good boss if you're not paying attention to this stuff. And that's why, the psychological health and safety is such an important issue, and why we're, the national standards, although still voluntary, maybe someday will not become voluntary, because people need to feel safe. They need to feel safe talking about it and saying, this is unreasonable. Like, yes, I'm not overworking and I'm going to drive a forklift and, drop something on somebody's head, but my mental health is suffering. That's real. That's a real danger. So I think it's a huge question. It's really important. If you're a leader, please be checking in with yourself and your staff, and the people you're leading, whatever you call them. And we need to also have people paying attention to this so that workers can feel safe.
Great. I've got one more question in the stack, but if
Okay.
we probably have time for one or more, if anybody else wants to send more in, there's
Okay.
room for more. With the pandemic affecting the economy, people are eager to get jobs and may forget about the work-life balance for a while. How can they continue keeping the balance once they start working hard to keep the job they have?
Excellent question. So what I recommend for when you've done your kind of values work and you've kind of got your vision, is that you be dancing between values and goals. Lots of people sort of confuse them. Values is that kind of what's important to you, and the goals is the action, what you're doing along the way. It's like the values are the directions, and the goals are the little chunks. Set a time every 6 months for yourself, to just kind of reevaluate and say, what's been happening with my bullseye? Okay, what do I want? Do I still need to be working this hard to keep this job? Because you know what? Maybe absolutely you go in it with a strategic plan. For the next 3 months, I'm giving her at work. And you talk to your family and say, do I have your support to pull back a little bit on family stuff, really focus on quality family time instead of quantity? And, or you tell yourself, I'm not going to try and date anybody or do whatever it is for the next week because I'm going to focus on work. That's fine, right? If it's done consciously with your intent, but just be checking in with yourself to say, do I still need to do this anymore? Or do now I have security and money and now I can pull back and make room for something else? So just keep checking in with yourself. I even program things I tell clients to put things in your calendar, and let's face it, it'll pop up like, check in with your values, do your bullseye or whatever, and I ignore it. But it's still a reminder to be like, okay, do it sometime soon.
And I imagine it would be pretty important to continue to check in with your life partner on this as well.
Absolutely. You do one for yourself, do one with your, you could even have a couple. You do one, I'll do one. Let's come together and see, kind of what our life plan is. And it might be that you step back and say, okay, this is the phase in our life where we're going to really lean into our careers. And then next we're going to, well, nobody's really traveling now. So, but then there's going to be this time for travel. And, if you do it with intention, during those points where you are in balance, it doesn't feel as bad because you're like, okay, but I'm going to be doing this later. So this feels good.
Great. Well, I think we're just about, well, time is up. So thank you very much. That was great. That was very informative. And everybody stayed with us as well.
So good. That's always a good sign.
Yeah.
They might be in their pajamas folding laundry, but they're with us. Yay.
And there's some information is where to contact you and other type of information has been put into the chat by the Actsafe people. Great. So super. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much.
Everybody, thank you all for attending as well.